I will be teaching you how to bake chocolate chip cookies from scratch. This is the recipe I will be using, my own personal recipe that I have fine-tuned over the years. Pull out your cold ingredients. The cold things are going to be your butter and your eggs. Butter should be closer to room temperature so that it can mix in better. You never want to microwave it or melt it in any way. That would ruin your cookies. And you want your eggs out also closer to room temperature because it also causes them to mix into a smooth batter much better. I like to use my KitchenAid mixer, but you're also welcome to get out a hand mixer. If you don't have time to bring your butter to room temperature, you can very carefully microwave it for maybe 8 seconds just to give it a bit of an edge off. And then another tip is to take your rolling pin and you can smash your butter. This allows it to get way more surface area to come to room temperature much quicker. You should also set your oven to the correct temperature. For this recipe, it is 375. The first thing you need to put in are your butters or fats. It usually means your butter and if there's any shortening. Once your butter and Crisco are creamed together uniformly, you can scrape down your edges and get ready to add your sugars. When you measure sugar, basically any white powder, you want to make sure you are leveling off with a flat edge of some kind. I just use a butter knife. Because if you can imagine, if I just eyeball it like this, the top, watch how much still comes off when I do a very literal level. Those kind of differences in baking really change the science of your baking. So it's important that you get it exact every time. When you measure brown sugar, it sort of has that sticky, sort of like damp sand, building a sandcastle feeling to it. And that's kind of how you're gonna treat brown sugar. You can just scoop up what you need and sort of pack it in like you're gonna build a sandcastle. You don't need to pack it so bad that you're hurting your hand. But you do want a general packed consistency, that it's not loose in there, so that you can dump it out sort of like building a sandcastle at the beach. Now you are ready to blend your sugars into your butters and fats. Do this until it's completely uniform, scraping off the edges if you need to. Once your mixture looks completely uniform, this nice light brown, we can next look at our vanilla and eggs. I've added the vanilla and the 2 eggs and they are ready to be mixed in. Again, until it's uniform, and scrape off the edges. Your mixture should be looking like this. And now we can move on to our dry powdered ingredients. Flour is obviously very fluffy. It's full of a lot of air. So depending on how you deal with your flour, you don't want to pack it down. So the way to do this is to fill with a spoon until you're overflowing your cup. And then do the same thing as we did with our sugar and level it off. So just tapping it around just to make sure there's no big obvious air bubbles down in there still, and scrape off the excess. I've added the flour, but I will not mix it yet. We need to make sure we add all of our dry ingredients before we mix in dry ingredients. Never measure your salt and pour it in over your bowl, because if you overdo it, you cannot get that salt back out. The best way to measure salt is off to the side. I'm just doing it over a bowl so I can catch it. The reason you wait to mix your powders in at the very end is because flour is very touchy. So once flour gets wet, the gluten is activated in it. Gluten is what develops and provides that stretchiness, sort of like in your bread. The more that it gets worked, the stretchier and tougher it becomes. But that's not something we want in cookies. We want our cookies to stay very tender and not get that stretchiness to the gluten in the flour. So you need to only mix this until it is barely uniform and then stop. Generally, when chocolate chip cookies ask for chocolate chips, they're asking for semi-sweet chocolate chips. This, of course, can come down to personal preference if you'd prefer something like dark chocolate or milk chocolate, but generally they're asking for a semi-sweet because that balances out the sweetness of all the sugar already in the cookie. Again, remember, you do not want to overmix flour in cookies. We want to only mix it till it barely looks like they are integrated, and then be done. I have this really neat cookie dough scoop that allows you to get very uniform, perfect cookie dough balls. If you don't have this, just get out a regular tablespoon. The only thing that's really important here is that they are uniform in size and shape. General rule of thumb for drop cookies like this is about 2 inches apart so that they have room for the heat to hit them from all sides uniformly. They can spread out without smushing together on the pan in the oven. Put them into your preheated 375-degree oven. Make sure they are on a center rack like this. If I'd put them on the bottom, then the bottoms of the cookies are going to be too dark. If I'd put it any higher, then the top of the cookies are going to be too dark. Always set your time to the lowest listed time. For this recipe, it's 8 minutes. My 8-minute timer just went off, so I want to see where they're at right now. They still look really light and almost still wet in the middle, so this is not time to come out yet. Set it at most for an extra 1 or 2 minutes and then check them again. This is the sweet spot you're looking for. Right when your brain thinks maybe they need 1 more minute, that's when you pull them out, because baked goods continue to bake on the sheet after you take them out. So if you start seeing that little bit of golden on the edges, teeniest bit, pull them out. Give them about a minute on the hot tray, and then you want to transfer them off that hot tray so that they stop baking. Ideally, put them on wire racks like these, otherwise they're going to get fairly dried out. I've let this beautiful cookie cool for a few more minutes on the wire rack. So now it's just up to you, your preference for when to eat them. Do you like them soft and still a little wet in the middle, or do you like to let them cool down more to room temperature? This is the fun part. You get to decide.